Now that you have packed away the Christmas ornaments and Christmans for the season, it's time for some contemplation. Those Christmans are from the 80s. They're made of styrofoam. The glitter has dropped off and they're being held together with toothpicks. Don't celebrate another Christmas harkening back to the age of glitter balls. See Ad Crucem's beautifully designed Christmons, together with our book describing how they fit into the church year. Visit adcrucem.com. That's ADCRUCEM.com.
You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we have a conversation with a creative. Another one. This is 2 in a row, but you know what? That's okay.
I'm cool with it.
Because we've had 2 fantastic ladies in the Ladies Lounge with us. This means we have another guest with us today, probably a guest that many of you are familiar with, and I'm super excited to have her in the lounge with us today. Erin, take it away. Who do we have with us?
Today we have Katie Schuermann.
Yay!
Yes. I specifically asked how to pronounce her last name, and I think I nailed it.
You nailed
You
it,
did.
sister.
Nailed
you
it.
nailed it. Hashtag nailed it.
Yes. And Katie is here with us today. Katie is someone that I have only ever heard about and read. I've read her thoughts, but I've never met her. And so I'm really excited to be chatting today with her. Katie, you are primarily a writer is what I know your creativity. That's where I know it from. But I hear that you actually have more than just writing as a creative pursuit. So I'd like to start by hearing your thoughts about the different ways you explore creativity.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Erin. How do you pronounce your last name?
Mine is pretty straightforward. It's Alter.
All right. So creativity to me, I think, has just always been a part of my upbringing. My father was a mechanical design engineer for Caterpillar, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was about in junior high. She went back and finished her collegiate education and ended up being my English teacher in high school.
Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah. And I am the youngest of 3 daughters, which I think is a perfect position for being creative because you spend your life watching other people older than you and listening to them. You're absorbing all kinds of stimuli and it comes out in various ways.
Oh, I relate to that. Yeah.
Right? Yes. There's
We're children.
Yes. I think most of my creative time in my 43 years of life to this date has been making music, actually. Yeah, that's what I went to school for. Got my undergraduate degree in vocal pedagogy, which is the kind of the science of teaching people to sing, and taught for many years at a music school in St. Louis is where I had my first full-time teaching job. And then I taught at different colleges and universities around the Midwest. So my graduate degrees are in choral conducting and then also in music history and literature. Cool. And so most of my time being creative has been spent at a piano or in front of a microphone. I almost said microwave. Also a lot of time spent in front of a microwave.
Hashtag relatable.
Right? Not being creative, but letting that machine create a few things for me. And then only, I think around the time when I was in my 30s, did writing in earnest insofar as like publications kind of became a part of our life. And I say our because, you know, any job you have, your whole family takes it on. So,
Yep. True.
Yeah. So I think I could say most of my creative time actually is spent making music, singing, and being at the piano. In the last couple of years, it's been sitting at the organ, which is new to me.
Very cool.
COVID, of course, we all have our COVID stories. Mine is that my husband is a pastor at University Lutheran Church on the campus of the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And the tradition at UniLou, as we fondly call it, is to have a variety of organists who come in on rotation. And of course, living in Illinois when the state mandates hit, it wasn't okay to mix communities like that. So my dear husband looked at me and he said, "Could you?" And I said, "Oh my." That was Holy Week of 2020. Yes, I did play the piano for a few months before I actually did a service on the pipe organ. And that was in July of 2020. And so about a year and a half I've been playing. Although this year I am just a sub organist because we have a student who is a full-time organ major and is our organist at the church. So yeah. So but that awesome. I did not write very much that year because my hours of creativity were literally sucked out of me by the bellows and so of the organ. But
I'm going to be honest with you. So this is Bree, by the way. Hello.
Hi, Bree.
What's up? My husband is in his vicarage year currently. And I just have to say that as a pastor's wife in the future, if he's ever like, do you want to learn the organ because of a pandemic? I even then would not graciously respond as you did with the "oh my." Like I'd probably use two different words in response to that. So kudos to you, ma'am, because nope.
Well, all glory to the Lord. There was much crying.
Amen.
There was much praying. There still is much praying. When I sit down on that bench of a Sunday morning, this is the thing. So, when you are a music major, you spend years, decades of your life applying yourself to a specific instrument or, a specific performance art. And so one thing learning the organ taught me is that I've been singing a long time because I realized that when I am in a high stress performance situation with singing, my body knows what to do. It knows how to focus. I don't even notice it doing it anymore. And the reason I know that is because it does not do that on the organ. When that stress hits me, I mean, I almost start to cry. Probably borderline panic attack the very first Sunday. Definitely spiritual attack. Wow, that was real. And all you can do is literally you're staring at the music and just praying, "Help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord." And he does. But I think as a singer, there is just some muscle memory that would kick in. There's some discipline of the body and of the psyche that kicks in. There's some, probably neural pathways my brain automatically goes on, but that is not the case with the organ. I've had to start as if I'm in 5th grade again and try to train not just my body and my musicianship, but also the part of my brain that handles stress. It's a whole new game. And it's been so humiliating. We have a wonderful congregation, and every Sunday I feel like they're my therapist. Just like, "You were fine. It was okay. We kept singing." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry. This is so embarrassing." They're like, "You're fine." So that's been my most recent creative misadventure. So
I love that you brought out the fact that any kind of creative outlet tends to drain you in a different way than other kinds of work do. And you mentioned that you haven't done that much writing during this season in which you've been trying to semi-master the organ. And good job. That is such a different instrument from the piano. I think my husband asked me something similar once, and I said, "I'll play the piano for as long as you like, but." So my question is, how do you sort of negotiate that limited amount of creative energy that you have and dole it out to yourself for the projects that you want to spend it on?
I've definitely learned over time through crises where my limitations are. A couple of memories really stick out in my mind. One is I was backstage doing a show. It was a kind of a variety show, theatrical musical theater thing. And I was backstage, full makeup, in gown, mic'd up. And it was a big theater. I think it was a theater that could seat 1,500. And I just was really upset. I was really stressed. I mean, my heart rate was going. And any time you have to perform anything, your adrenaline, you want it to work for you, but it works against you for the most part. But when you're a singer, the adrenaline is coursing through the very blood that will take oxygen to your muscles that will equip your singing. And so it becomes a quick mental battle because you have to work through the hell that your body's putting you through. And by hell, I mean, like, if you want to hold a long note that is sung very high, good luck when your heart is racing as if you're running down a street. And so you learn to pray. The Lord always teaches us to pray. But then you also learn different things to try to combat what's chemically going on in your body. And so, like, you learn to lift your arms away from your body. It's the most unnatural thing to do, but you want to slow that heart rate down. You want to take deep breaths. You want to basically burn the adrenaline, and you want to try to get your brain to think about the things it can control in the 3 minutes you have before you walk on stage. But the stress for me was that while I was doing that, it was also a spiritual attack. Or maybe that's not the right way to say it. I think it was a spiritual comeuppance is what it was. I was realizing what a prideful, despicable, gross, miserable human being I was, because I was so concerned about my pride and my reputation. And that was the crisis I was having, is that what if I go out there and botch it in front of this whole audience who's going to have phones, videoing me and then putting it all over the internet? And it was such a crisis of like, wow, I really care about myself, don't I? And that was a moment where I realized this is not worth it. What it's doing to my body is not, the experience is not pleasurable enough to warrant this. But then beyond that, it was I can't keep doing this if it is all about me. And so in that moment, I learned this has to be about something more than just myself, or it is not worth it. And that began my pretty typical prayer before I do anything that is performy, as I like to call it. And that prayer is this. I'll just share it with you. Lord Jesus, forgive me for my pride. I think way too much about myself. Please forgive me and help me to realize what a gift it is to do this and what a gift you are giving me, and that it should be an enjoyable experience because it is the culmination of a lot of work. Lord, help me to remember the goodness of your gifts and help me to bring glory to your name and to serve my neighbor. Amen. And then I ask forgiveness. And then I really do try to focus on what a blessing it is to do. Not everybody gets to do fill in the blank, because the Lord gives good gifts to specific people. And we all are those people who get specific gifts from him that we then get to share for the benefit of the body of Christ and to the glory of his name. So that was one memory. Another memory was, I think it was around 2014 or so, and I was indeed writing in earnest at that point. I had finished House of Living Stones, and my publisher really wanted The Choir Immortal to come out in about 6 months after that. Yeah, it was too fast.
That's tight.
I was...
J.K. Rowling couldn't do that.
Right. That's, definitely things have to be sacrificed in that situation, whether it's the quality, the quantity, or your health. And I was choosing to sacrifice my health rather than the other two. Because at the same time, in order to do that, I had scheduled my presentation travel schedule to fit my writing schedule. But with that pushed up deadline, they would coincide. And when you're writing fiction, well, I'm sure the experience is different for every author. But for me, writing nonfiction, it is not a problem for me to do other things at the same time. I think it's because when you're writing nonfiction, you're writing true, real things. It's not unlike being a reporter. You're taking stimulation that's outside of you and trying to communicate very clearly about it, interpret it for the reader. That does not require the same brain space for me. It's not because it's easier or that one is harder. It's just that I could probably still travel, give a presentation, then come back to my hotel room and go right into the headspace I need to communicate that truth. But creative writing, to stop writing and to go into a different headspace, to go perform and do something else, when I come back to the writing, it's like starting all over again. And that is a very laborious shoot yourself in the foot way of writing a very long story. You can lose track of so much. And so I chose to do those at the same time and learned. I got shingles at that time.
Whoa.
Right?
Reaction of stress.
Oh yeah. I remember putting on a shirt one morning and like, I thought there must have been a spider in my shirt or something because I felt like something on my, like a bite on my back. I now know that was nerve flare. And I had my husband look at it. He's like, yeah, I think you did get a bite. There's like a little bubble of something there. And then I think it was 2 days later, I tried to look at it in the mirror and I was like, that's a spider with a very wide mouth and weird teeth. Because there are like 13 bubbles and they're spread out and then they scabbed. And I remember I was driving the car and my husband was in the passenger seat and we were driving to take my goddaughter out for her baptism birthday. And I just said, sweetheart, would you Google shingles images for me? And he's like, what? And I knew I had it when he went, oh. So next day I went to the doctor and this is the doctor's response. She looked at it. She goes, oh, honey, are you stressed?
Not the
And I was like,
honey.
I know. Because I said, do people my age get shingles? She said, they can. You do. And I have found that the Lord in his mercy, when I am ignoring my like bio responses that kick in to tell you too much, because this is a problem too. When you are trained to be a performer, you train your body, you train your brain not to feel those things.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm sometimes not very good at catching when it's too much. I'm getting better. I'm much better now. But the Lord, I feel like always gives me something that shows me that it's too much. And so those two things, I think, one, realizing the spiritual like battle of my pride and the navel gazing I can get into so quickly that it's just gross. And I just loathe it and it's disgusting. I'm thankful that he helped me realize that that's a poor life if everything that's creative is about coming back to myself. So he kind of saved me from myself. It's a continual battle, but then the second thing was just realizing there are physical limitations. And just because, and this is a youngest child thing, right? Just because somebody tells you to do something doesn't mean you should. So,
I feel that.
but, yeah. So Rachel, kind of that is to me kind of where I'm at often when I'm trying to think through, is this a good fit to do? And I'm learning that if I say yes to something else must go. I must say no. And this is where I think being a Christian too is super helpful because our Lord, he does not abandon us ever, but even in just these, life questions of how should I spend my time, he gives us so much feedback in his word of like, well, I can immediately ask, does it take me away from my husband? Then I probably should say no. Or I should at least talk to my husband and see what he thinks about it. And so there are these vocational check marks that also help me realize when to say yes and when to say no. And I do not always get it right, but I am getting better. I'm thankful to say.
I can relate to that completely. I have to tell myself and my children, you can do maybe not anything, but you can do many things, but you cannot do everything.
Right.
Choices have to be made. And then you can't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do.
Yeah. I think it was Pastor Todd Peppercorn. I was out in California at his church leading a retreat and we were sitting talking and he didn't realize he was changing my life when he said this, but he said, every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. But the flip side is true. When you say no to something, it's so you can say yes to something else. Right.
Okay.
And
Thank
he
you,
likes
Pastor Peppercorn.
Right. Yeah. That's so helpful to me. He said he actually even likes to keep track of his yeses and nos so that he can see on paper that balance. Yeah. So it kind of like preaches to him, that was a good decision, kind of thing.
I like that.
Let's talk about, because I love writing and reading and everybody here knows that. Let's talk about fiction and nonfiction because you are one of the few people I know who has written both. Now, I don't write fiction for the very reason that you said. I wish I wrote fiction, but you write nonfiction, you can write an outline one morning and then you can come back the next and you can tackle points A through C on your outline, take a break, go to lunch, come back and pick up where you left off. Fiction, you got to pack up your imagination, go live in a place in like 10 different people's lives and then tell people what's going on. And you can't, it's not as simple as clicking in and out. Like if I actually sit down to write fiction, it's 4 hours later and my kids are going, Mom, we're hungry. And it just is not something, it's something I have to say no to right now. You, however, have written fiction in the Bradbury series, but also nonfiction books like He Remembers the Barren. And you did Pew Sisters, right?
Yes, Pew Sisters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which do you like better and why? And how on earth do you do both?
Well, I have to say this, Rachel. I think one difference is, our Lord has given you the gifts of children. Yes. And that's one of those vocational checkpoints, right? Mm-hmm. My husband and I are barren. And so I have probably, think of me as like a grandma or somebody who is in that season of life where the kids are out of the house. I have a little bit more freedom to enter into those like 4-hour long writing sessions. So that's part of it. And I hope someday that season is coming for you.
I hope so too. Although I gotta say, I'll be sad when they're all gone.
Yeah, right. I know the Lord. He does order our lives, doesn't he?
He does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
Well, the reason I've done both is because it's just the path that I've been on, and that I think it's the good works the Lord has prepared for me to do. Some of them, and so the reason it's interesting. I had a publisher ask me this once with a particular publishing house. He said, "Why do you do both?" That's not because he was actually, or she was encouraging me to just do fiction. And the best response I could give is, I'm actually a member of a very small synod. And so there's opportunity for me to do both, first of all. But second of all, the nonfiction opportunities have just kind of come about in our lives based off of where we've lived, who we've been with, and our experiences and people asking for such things. And probably the most experience I have in writing, of course, is expository writing, just, by nature of graduate school and journalism. Yeah. So those opportunities came about because they were offered to me. The fiction opportunity I asked for. And it is partly because I just think that's who I am. I am a musician, but the practice, the discipline of applying yourself to a piece of music that is beyond your capability, that looking at something and going, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to try it, but I know I'm going to have to rehearse this piece for 2 to 3 hours a day for the next 3 months, and I might have it ready by the time I need to do it in front of people. That is just a pattern of my life. And it's a rhythm I'm actually comfortable with, and even in some ways excited about. I think it's a habit in my life. So when it came time to write a fiction book, it's the same discipline. I mean, who can write a book? I can't write a book. I can't write a fiction book. I don't know how to make people laugh. I don't know how to make people cry. I don't know. But you go, I'm going to try it. And I know that if I just do the math, if I want to finish it in a year, if there are 365 days, you set these small goals, and it's just like that piece of music. I can't sing that melisma at that speed in that range, but after 3 months I can. It's the same with the fiction. By sitting down and applying myself to a disciplined habit of writing, not only does my body learn how to sit for that long at a laptop, but also my brain starts to want to do that work. And my subconscious then kicks in. And actually, that's the hard part of stopping, is that you train your subconscious to stop thinking about it, because it will chew on it while you're sleeping. It'll chew on it while you're showering. It'll chew on it while you're writing and while you're not writing. But that brain space, that momentum is so important for me for finishing that kind of creative work. And the longer I can keep all of the details of the book in mind, the more fruitful that non-writing time is. Mm-hmm. My brain can feast on that, and it will just start coming up with the things that I think are special. Usually the special things don't come from my labor. The special things come after I've labored, and then they just pop into your head at a certain point. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I do believe those are gifts from God. I do believe He is giving me the thing I need when I need it to do the task that is before me. And I can get really wrapped up in myself. Oh, this needs to be really good. Everybody's going to read it and everybody's watching. Or I could just acknowledge the fact that I'm going to try it, Lord. And if this can serve people, help me do it. And he does. He does. And I pray these books serve Christ and his church. I have some aspirations to write some books that aren't about Christianity, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have aspirations to write books that aren't about Christianity. Like, I like the idea of that, but every time I sit down to write, I'm not interested in dwelling for months and months on things that don't matter.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the other part with fiction. You are pretending for a very long time. And
very long make-believe.
very long make-believe. And it helps ground me if that make-believe is for good. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You mentioned just now, I hear the theme of discipline coming up again and again and again. And as I think about the other people that we've talked with the Conversations with Creatives sort of series, I feel like that is a common thread, the discipline of it. And yet at the same time, I don't know, when I think about creativity, typically discipline is not something that comes to mind. And I don't know if that's just a cultural thing, or if it's because when you move creativity to the level that it is your vocation, or it is directly connected in with your vocation, that's when discipline comes in. I don't know. But it was interesting hearing you talk about that. And I don't know if you have any other thoughts on how discipline does connect in with creativity.
I can describe how it feels. From where I sit, to begin a book, there is this energy of excitement. Oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, that's not, there is probably that thing we all relate to of, oh, that sounds fun. I would really love to do that, Or, the child who's 6, I really want to learn to play the piano, Mom, right? I really do. And then 3 weeks into it, the child goes, this is terrible. I have to sit and I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do it. But my hands won't go that way. And I don't know what that music means. There's all those things, right?
Why are you making fun of me?
Oh, and most importantly, it's been 3 weeks. Why don't I sound like you yet?
Right. Where's the romance in all of this? But the same thing is true, for starting a book. There is the excitement of like, that just sounds romantic, right? To be a writer, to go off to Maine for a whole year at the cottage that overlooks the lake, like all these things that I guess, I don't know, that they do in the movies.
I know the very one you speak of.
Yes. I still want to go there.
He is not a member of a small synod. But there is that. And that does stick with you. There are little mountaintop moments through the whole long marathon where you realize, I do love this. This is, that's great, But that's, I would say, 5% of the experience. The other 95% is, I did not get enough sleep last night. That storm woke me up, but I got to write. Oh, but my back hurts. I've got shingles, but all these, I'm a lady and I've got lady things going on, or, or there's family trouble. Or there's, church stress, all these things that want to occupy your brain and your heart. But what gets the book done is not writing only when I feel like it. What gets the book done is me sitting down and applying myself to the story. And amazingly, it ends up being completed at some point, one word at a time. Every word written is one less word I have to write. Every page written is one less page I have to write. And so I know that the only way that happens is by sitting down and doing it. But the other side of it, the other part that I can describe is that, so that doesn't mean that everything I write is good or worth publication. And so there is also that reality that I have to put things on the page, period. But I also recognize that God has given me a certain skill set. And that skill set seems to have, some ability to write something that is interesting or entertaining to read. And so while I'm working, I'm also applying my gifts to what I'm doing. And so in that craft that I'm applying, there's also great satisfaction as an artist in that regard. So while there's just the disciplined work, the time on my patukas, like writing up the laptop, but then there's also that, but I need to apply myself. This isn't just wasted time. I need to apply myself. And then I also have those little mountaintop experiences. And every writer is different, but for me, I do write from page 1 all the way to the end. I rarely skip around in a story, because the thing that is really important to me is the meter of a story. And the way I can get the meter right is if I piece it together from the beginning all the way to the end. There are other ways to do it. It's just that usually the way you do it is the way you've done it. And when it works, just do it again. And so that's another reason I don't like to be interrupted too much, is because then I lose everything that came before. I usually have to go back and read it all over again. And once you have done that 3 times, it's too many. You lose the magic, you lose the energy, you lose the interest. And that is usually when I will ask somebody to read it to me. Because then I see it afresh through them. They have not encountered the material yet. And I can care about it again suddenly because I'm in the moment with them again. It's not that I know what's going to happen. Now I can see, is it working? Do they like it or do they not? And that helps me get back into it. And then some of that romantic energy happens again of like, oh, that's right. I do like this story. Oh, I do like where it's going. Or, like, oh, I can change that. I can do that. I can, So, but the people who write books are simply the people who do it. And then the people who write good books are the people who do it and apply their gifts. Both situations.
Well, I have a question, because obviously I'm not a career writer. Like, that's not really my vocation, and I've talked about this on episodes past. I kind of have this like ball of growing creative potential energy in my gut.
She does.
And like, I love painting and like creating and writing. And I feel like one way to like realize that potential energy is writing. So for somebody who kind of does it as a hobby, like if you say just sit down and do it, I mean, sister, I love that approach, but that's not going to do it for me. So, like, what other advice could you give to somebody who kind of just wants to do it on the side, but how else might you find motivation in your experience or maybe even your interactions with other authors?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is that craft side of it I'm talking about.
Okay.
There's the actual like physical decision to do it and putting in the hours. Let me use this analogy. All kinds of people run marathons, right? They're the ones who like tiptoe trot the marathon, they lift their knees up, that's their run. You have those who race, right? To race, you must have a certain, physical ability. You must have trained a certain amount so that you can not only do it, but handle whatever crises come your way, right? You also need some experience. You need to know your body, all these things. So the writer who is applying a craft to it is not just going to sit down and write, but they're going to apply all that they know to their writing. So here's some advice I can give. So that ball of energy you're describing, oh yes, that's good. That is good. And I think you should do it. I think you should.
Can I have some of your ball of energy?
Yeah, come get it.
That makes me think of cheese balls. I don't know why, but cheese balls are delicious.
It is a cheese ball. It's a giant cheese ball in my gut. I just had a visual of like a doctor being like, Mrs. Grzelewski, your x-rays are here. And he puts them up on the x-ray wall and there's a giant cheese ball in my gut.
It's my creative energy cheese ball.
It's my creative energy. I think that's how I express creativity, is I come up with these ridiculous scenarios.
Please make a painting of that. I want a Brie-inspired painting of your ball of energy in your gut. Please.
What you should do is you should make a little painting and put it in your writing space. It can remind you to focus.
Yes.
Keep the cheese ball, preserve the cheese ball. Keep the cheese ball alive. Yeah.
Cheese ball.
Okay, but when it comes to the craft, the application of it, I'm gonna strip away all mystery here.
Good.
Don't watch any television.
Okay.
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 Yeah.
What about
Take
the
social media
internet?
off your phone.
Uh-huh.
What
Take
about
social media off your phone. Okay.
Those
Whatever at night your flesh is craving to do that keeps you from being creative, it's time to start developing a habit of denying yourself.
Okay. Oh boy.
Because
Okay.
that's the task. That's the task is, will you work? Will you
Okay.
work? And so the answer to that is maybe. And so you got to know yourself. For me, it's we do not have a television in our house. Okay. We rarely watch movies, partly because at this point I've been writing long enough that I don't appreciate the movies as much anymore.
Yeah.
There's just, and not, I don't mean that in a snobby way. I just mean that in a trash in, trash out.
Yeah.
Put a book by your bed that's better than you and read it.
Okay.
A nonfiction and a fiction. In fact, okay, grab or check out from the library or buy. I actually encourage you to buy Elizabeth von Arnim's The Enchanted April. Okay.
Ooh, I've
It
not
is a
read
fiction
that. I've
book.
seen the movie, though. The movie is excellent.
Oh, and the book and the movie are very similar. So if you like the movie, you'll love the book. Yeah.
You read
Now,
you watch the movie and you think, I bet this is really close to the book.
Yeah, you can tell, can't you? Yeah,
Yeah.
you really can. Her
club.
writing is exquisitely delicious. It is just her imagery, especially for ladies. It's a lady book. It's about ladies. And she has just enough cheek, right? And just enough sincerity. And her modifiers are not, they're not too many and not too few. They're perfect. Let that elevate the meter and structure of the sentences that you think and say throughout the day. Okay. Get a fiction book that's better than all of us. Okay. Then get a nonfiction book that is insightful and well written and has perfect grammar. Okay. Anything by John Kleinig is wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
Get some Wendell Berry essays and just start digesting them.
I
It's
love
not
him.
really so much about if you super appreciate the content, though that's helpful. You're gonna again, you want good nourishment for your brain. Okay.
Sure.
Then deny yourself the things that don't matter, the things that take up your time, that melt your cheese ball. Okay. Like you want to keep the right refrigeration of that cheese ball, and anything that's mindless is just going to suck away your creative energy.
Suck away the cheese.
Yeah. Store the cheese. And then I want you for 3 weeks in a row, just commit to it. Think of it as a training session. And then at the end of 3 weeks, we can assess. Okay. But for 3 weeks, no matter how you feel, no matter what time of the month it is, no matter who lives in your home and does not abide by you, I want you to pick 45 minutes every day that you can sit and try to write starting at the same time every day. If that's after kids go to bed, great. If it's right before supper, great. But I want you to start at the same time every day.
Okay.
If
For
you
3
can
weeks.
make it for 3 weeks. And if
Okay.
you can make it at a time where if you wrote longer, you could, that would be good.
Okay.
But the important thing is I want you to start at the same time every day.
Okay.
And I want you to muscle through those really awful 45 minutes where you just don't feel like it. You know, you're pushing the same paragraph around the whole time, and just do it anyway. And then come back to it the next day. And what you're doing is, I believe, when you are training your body and your brain to do a particular task, you're going to get better at it. And not only are you going to get better at it, but your creative brain, your subconscious is going to start kicking in. It's going to be like, oh, we're doing this? Are we really? Okay. And then about 3 weeks into it, maybe earlier, you might be better in shape than I am. Maybe earlier, you're going to start having things happen to you through the day like, oh, I should do this with that. Or, oh, what if this happened? And you need to have a notebook,
Okay.
something with you all the time, and write those things down.
Okay.
And bring them to your session that you're going to sit down and write and have fun with it. And I would recommend for these first 3 weeks, don't do very much planning
Okay.
of your writing. Brain dump instead. Write the thing that is fun for you.
Okay.
Okay. Why don't you tell the story of you
Okay.
and do it in the voice that is you, that brings you pleasure. Okay. And just do that. Okay. And if you have funny times, great. If you have sad times, great. If you have, but apply yourself. And then after 3 weeks, we should assess, and you're going to go, is this worth my time? And if it is, keep doing it and expand the hours if you can. And yeah, at that point, I would say if you decide you do want to do it, probably going to have a little inkling of an idea of what it is you can say, of what it is you want to share. Because that's the other thing. In order to do that, you have to have something to talk about. And usually in the trial period, you're figuring out what you have nothing to say about, right? Or what you have something to say about. That's probably how my nonfiction books came about, is I realized there's something to say here and I'm not finding it being said anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so in fiction, it's the same thing. You can put in your fiction things that you are not finding being talked about anywhere else, that you want talked about, but you get to create the world for that. Find something that interests you and write it. And then when you're ready, show it to me.
Like you specifically?
To me. And I'll tell you.
We're going to workshop the next great American novel.
This is great.
Yes.
Although I really want you to write a children's book about a girl who has this burning desire cheese ball wanting to do something and her journey into actually doing the thing, because I like can see
That's
the
very
illustrations
meta.
in my head
Will
right
you
now.
illustrate it?
Yes. We're going to do it. I want to write a kid's book one day. I have several ideas, but let's make this happen.
Wait, you guys need to do this. You write the book and and Sarah illustrates it, and then you switch and Sarah writes and Bree illustrates. You're a power duo.
Let's do it. Inspired by Katie Schuermann. It's going to be amazing. But Katie, even though I don't know, I don't have a great desire to be an author other than maybe writing a few kids' books. But I resonate with what you're saying with creativity and discipline and this process of if you want to do something, you have to put the work in to do the thing. And that relates to all kinds of creative pursuits, no matter what it is. Like if you want to start a garden and that's your thing, like you have to put the work in for that and you have to dedicate yourself to that task. Or if you want to, I have a latch hook rug that I've been meaning to make for the last 10 years of my life and I haven't done it yet, but that's because I haven't actually put the work in or taken that time to have that time every day that I do the thing and I let go of all these other things that are distracting me. So that advice, even if it's not writing, that advice is golden for anything that you want to accomplish. You have to put the work in and kind of trust the process.
Absolutely. Because it's risky, right? You don't really know what's going to end up good at the end, but therefore it has to be about more than just that. And you need it to not pull you away from the things God has given you to do, right? Because then that gets messy too. And also too, creativity can be seasonal. You can have seasons of it. Certainly writing a book is a particular season of creativity. Practicing and working on a Bach cantata, that's a whole nother seasonal. But honestly, this is part of knowing myself. Part of why I did not write during COVID, right, is because I knew creatively my brain was going to be occupied by the organ. But the other thing is we had moved. Arranging my home is a creative thing.
Yes.
Right? And that's the task that was ahead of me. And that meant denying myself the writing, right? I talk about denying yourself the television, but in this case, it was I needed to deny myself the writing of a book because there was something else that needed my creativity. But to keep my brain in shape, I practiced writing. I collaborated with cantor Tim Shoemaker in Dallas, Texas on some hymns together, because then you're still, employing and keeping that skill alive, but that's not quite the time commitment of a novel. And so that's another craft thing. It's okay to take on smaller projects. It's okay to write an article here or, a short story here or a book here. But again, this is where I think being in Christ is super helpful. We don't do these things on our own. We have people in our family and in our church who love us and give us good advice about what kind of season we're in. And our Lord, shapes us by his Spirit into a knowing of our conscience helps guide us on what? It would be really selfish of me if I did this right now instead of, taking care of these people. And so I think that's one of the things that I find comforting in being a Christian who writes is that it's okay sometimes to say, not now. And it's also okay to say, now, Lord, help me be disciplined, right?
You said something that I want to use as a clever segue. You said sometimes it's okay to just write a short story. And
smooth.
we need to talk short stories because I got a burning email in my inbox a couple months ago from Pastor Roy Askins at the Lutheran Witness, who says, you have to get in touch with Katie Schuermann and have her tell you all about what's happening with Bradbury and the Lutheran Witness. And I want to hear it straight from you because I think you'll say it better than he did. No offense, Pastor Askins.
Well, first of all, can I say, Rachel, you and I kind of talked about this at one point anyway.
We did. And one of my great regrets is that it never happened under my tenure.
I'm sad about that too, but maybe we'll get to work together in another way.
So much fun.
I know. Well, okay. So yes, my fiction books are a little trilogy. I feel like you have to over-articulate the T. A little trilogy about church life, specifically in a small congregation, a small LCMS congregation in a small town in Illinois. And particularly the point of view of the balcony of the musicians in the church. And I did not want to write more than a trilogy with this particular cast of characters, just because, like that cheese ball in me, I wanted to make sure that I didn't melt it with too much attention. Honestly, when you're writing about church life, I think one of the balances is what's appropriate to talk about, what's not, what is beneficial, what's not, what is best construction, what is not, what's honest, but not hurtful. There's a balance there of, like, we'll kind of say in a certain way, trying to not break the 8th commandment while you're writing or cast a shadow over the church. And so I didn't want to write too many books on that particular congregation, because I feel like to keep generating plot material, at some point you're digging deeper into people's sin, right? Or putting them in situations that become unrealistic. I wanted to be able to walk away from it being pleased with what was written, not walking away and going, I wish I hadn't written that book, But I can say that I have deeply missed the people in the fictional town of Bradbury, Illinois, and they have stuck with me, and they continue to stick with me and talk to me sometimes. And I have been, as a writing exercise, I had been, for my subscription list through my website, I'd written a couple of short stories about Bradbury. And they came so easily. It was such a familiar space and a familiar rhythm and meter that it really blessed me when Reverend Askins contacted me and said, at one point there had been this idea, are you interested in continuing some Bradbury stories in the Lutheran Witness? And the timing was perfect. The season was right. I had been practicing that just a little bit for my own fun, and therefore felt like I could say, yes, I think that can be done. And so what we're doing is we're continuing the story of this congregation, one short story at a time. Each issue of the print edition of the Lutheran Witness in 2022 will have a new continuing story from this fictional little town. And I've chosen, this interests me, I've chosen to write about Bradbury in real time. So when the January 2022 issue of the Lutheran Witness comes out, it will be about the people in Bradbury during January of 2022.
Whoa, that's cool.
It's fun for me, and it's following the liturgical year.
Yes.
Of course it is.
Of course. That's what interests me. That's the power I have. No. That's the fun when you get to be the writer. You do get to control some things. And this is part of that craft too, what we were talking about. You do have to find something you're interested in. Not always. I mean, you can push through, but if you're going to do a long-term project, it helps if you have some of that it helps if you have a cheese ball. It really does. And I had a cheese ball about that. So where this is different than the books is that it's the fun challenge of what if somebody subscribes in March and they missed January and February. Each story is its own, but they are linked together. But it's a tiny different art form. It must reflect the rhythm and timbre and shape of the Bradbury books, because the fans of the books want that. They want that familiar voice. But a short story is an art form in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking of it as I'm writing fables from Bradbury. And the characters in these fables are the characters we know and love from the books in the year 2022. And it's been a joy. I'm just about done with the April story. And the April one has been harder for me to write. Some of them are harder. Sometimes I choose, let me put it this way. When you're writing a short story, one of the challenges is you place the record on the record player and the whole album is good, but you don't have time to listen to the whole album. So you have to decide where you're going to drop the needle.
Mm.
And so with short story writing, that's the fun, and that's the terribly difficult thing, is you really, hopefully with the Lord's help, can drop the needle in the right place over and over again, because there's not time to bring everybody up to speed. There's not time to do anything other than tell a really good tale right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a real joy for me. I have always been a fan of the short story. When I was in high school, I got a hold of a volume of O. Henry short stories.
Oh, they're so good.
They're so fun. I mean, I devoured them. I loved them. And I think that has shaped a lot of my creative writing. I love his approach to storytelling. He drops the needle all the time, and he does it so well. And he has these fun twists, And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to practice that art form myself.
That is so cool. I need to actually get in touch with CPH and update my subscription address since I just moved. Make sure that that's all sorted out before January. Not a lot of time.
Well, it will bless me to know you're reading them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'll be thinking about you. You'll be one of my people. I'll be like, okay, Rachel's reading them.
Oh, good. Good.
How can people find those? You mentioned that it's in the Lutheran Witness, but now we have to put in the plug-in for
That's right.
people who are now interested. How can they actually find these short stories?
Well, first, if you've never read the Anthems of Zion series, which is my fiction series, it's okay. You should still really enjoy these stories. If you have read the Anthems of Zion series, I think you're going to be delighted about what you read. I pray, anyway. But so in that regard, the only place these stories are going to be published and available is the print edition of the Lutheran Witness in 2022. That's the only medium. It won't be available online. I won't have them to distribute in any other way. They are only going to be in the print edition of the Lutheran Witness. So if you do not already have a subscription, what you want to do is go to, I think it's witness.lcms.org /Bradbury, which is the name of my fictional town. Bradbury is spelled Bradbury. Or just, go into your search engine, type in the Lutheran Witness Bradbury. It'll come up. Or go to my Facebook page, Katie Schuermann, author, and you'll find the links everywhere. Or go to my website, katieschuermann.com, click on the books tab, scroll down to the fiction series, and at the bottom of the fiction series, you'll find a link of how to subscribe to the print edition of the Lutheran Witness. And when you subscribe, you want to make sure in the notes section of the subscription page, make sure you want them to start your subscription in January.
And we should mention too that those who have not read the Bradbury series can find that information on your website, also on cph.org. Which have they published all your books, or all the ones I'm aware of? Almost.
They have published the fiction series, and then also Pew Sisters, which is nonfiction, and then through Emmanuel Press, I have He Remembers the Barren and He Restores My Soul.
Right. That was that's a good one too.
Yes, which I highly recommend those from Emmanuel Press, because we've talked with you, Katie, before on the coffee hour about those. Highly recommend, but have a box of tissues if you read He Remembers the Barren, because it will make you cry.
Oh, Sarah, you are my sister, and you are one of my favorite people to talk to about those books because you understand.
It's like you're speaking to my soul.
Well, thanks be to God for the opportunity to tell stories. May I share one thing with you that I came across a couple of weeks ago? Well, it was this past month that I thought you all might appreciate as well.
You can share anything you want.
Do any of you have the Bo Geertz daily devotional book through CPH called To Live with Christ?
No. I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, Ken has a copy, but I haven't read it.
It is wonderful. Bo Geertz is one of the great storytellers in Lutheranism.
Yes.
He wrote Hammer of God, which highly influences my own writing. And then there have been some more translations of his fiction works coming out as of late that I highly recommend. But CPH publishes just some of his pastoral writings in the form of a daily devotional. It's called To Live with Christ. And again, it's by Bo, B-O, Geertz, Giertz. And in the little bit of writing he did that was assigned to Friday after the second Sunday in Advent on that particular day. It's on page 42 if anybody has the book. This little little paragraph came to light. He's expounding on Isaiah chapter 51, verse 6, which is, "For the heavens will vanish like smoke, the earth will wear out like a garment, but my salvation will be forever." And here's what the sainted Reverend Geertz writes. Christ will come again. The Bible speaks mainly in pictures about this day. Pictures can't be read exactly like descriptions in an encyclopedia. They actually say and do much more. They get our imaginations and emotions working. They allow us to visualize things words can hardly express. A child can understand them just as well as a scholar, and we're never done examining them. When I came across that in his writing, I thought, oh, this is why I write.
Mm.
This is why I write. This is why I write fiction. And this is why I write nonfiction, because nonfiction is also storytelling. Sometimes you're telling somebody else's true story, or your own true story, or the true story of life on this earth. But when it comes to writing fiction, I'm creating word pictures that I hope tell something true, and that I hope can be accessed by all different generations of people, and that I hope will keep speaking in a way that when you come back to them, you find something new that you understand about real life. And I think that's one of the blessings of fantasy, fiction, or any kind of made up story, is you're actually trying to create a picture that helps people think on and understand better reality. And for me, as somebody who likes to write about life in the church, it's the same thing. If I'm writing a story, it's in hope that the story creates a picture that maybe is at the most instructive and exhorting, at the least maybe fun, and a diversion. But in an effort that it can help maybe refocus all of us and encourage us in our life together in the church. And I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. Use that cheese ball. It's I think it's a worthwhile thing to write something that your neighbor can read that helps reaffirm, oh yes, God created man who fell into sin, and God rescued, redeemed, reclaimed, reconciled him again by sacrificing his own son on the cross for our sake. Any story that reaffirms that and points toward that and mirrors that, I think is worthwhile.
Amen.
This was lovely.
Katie, I can talk to you for like 5 hours and it's going to feel like 10 minutes.
I love talking with you. You guys really, first of all, thanks for receiving that email from Roy. And thank you for inviting me to talk about this stuff. I could talk with you guys about it forever. And actually, then I would like to ask you questions. So that's the hard part about being interviewed, is I want to ask you questions.
Well, we'll save that for next time. That would be fantastic.
How about I do all of you creative people?
Do we have an episode dropping on April 1st ever? Because that would be super fun.
That's hilarious.
How the tables have turned.
The ladies
that's hilarious.
He's looking it up now.
We should I'm just going to put that on the calendar for April. Because
Hilarious.
April 1st is a Friday.
Oh, we're doing it. We're doing it.
Boom.
We are doing that.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. The ladies get interviewed.
What are you doing in late March, Katie?
I'm helping you guys. That's what I'm doing.
All right.
Yes, so fun.
That'll give us an opportunity to replug the very series. Right. So Roy will be very happy with that.
You are generous. No need to, not for that reason. It would just be so fun to hear you guys being interviewed. That would be so fun.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
We'll make it happen.
I love it.
I'm in love with this.
Oh, truly, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to, sit together and share ideas. It encourages me and reminds me that I need to keep at the discipline. So I thank you for the opportunity.
It's been really wonderful. Every time I get to talk with you, there's just like this nugget of wisdom that you just pull out of somewhere, and it just kind of blows my mind a little bit. And I'm like,
Sarah, that blessing. That's from the Lord then. That is not from the dirty bag that I am. So that must be the Lord.
Don't call my friend a dirty bag, Katie.
You can't smell me right now, but I may not have showered yet today. So.
Or can we?
Dirty bag full of cheese.
All that stinky cheese.
on that note,
Oh, what a delight. I wish we could all be together in person. Thank you.
Right
This is
on.
so good.
Someday we will be in the same place and it will be wonderful.
Mhm.
Oh, Katie, thank you so much for having the last hour with us. It has gone by so fast. We could easily talk for another hour on.
Well, you blessed me.
Yes,
Thank you.
It was wonderful. So, listeners, ladies, go to witness.lcms.org, subscribe to the Lutheran Witness. This podcast is dropping in January, which means you're going to want to go do that
Jump on it.
now when this podcast is over. So make sure you do that to get your hands on these stories. And you can find Katie Schuermann's other books at cph.org and emmanuelpress.us. So be sure to check those out as well. You can join our group on Facebook to be in the know with all of the things happening in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge. There's giveaways, stickers, talking about food, all those fun things we like to do in the Facebook group. You can also follow us on Instagram at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. You can find all of our podcasts at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge or on the KFUO radio app available from either app store or on your favorite podcasting app. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm calling it right now. This year's Chrismon 2.0 is a cheese ball.
Yes.
And I'm Rachel.
It goes on and on like a circle. Get it?
And it's gold, right?
It's gold.
Orangey gold.
And it sticks
I
on
just
your
snorted.
skin.
I just snorted. Wow. Sorry. And I also shouted, "I'm a stinky cheese" into a microphone. I've never done that before. So
Yes!
The lounge does tend to bring out the best in people.
oh, blessed Advent and Merry Christmas, you guys. Thank you.
KFUO Radio and the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast are underwritten in part by Ad Crucem. Visit them online at adcrucem.com. Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.